except for it's a blank screen. Okay, welcome guys. I took last week off. I got refreshed, went to Canmore, and it was -20. So hey, but it was still time away. It's like a trip. Welcome, February 10th today, 2022. And for those of you that have never dropped in before, my name is Trevor. This is our Technology Drop-In Thursday. On the screen here, I've got our agenda that we're going to be talking about. A big thing for everyone to do, and that includes me. It's a habit we have to get into. On Friday, we ended up moving over to using Microsoft to track our junk that comes in our Outlook stuff. So that means there's actually more emails going into your junk folder. So it's important that you go into your junk folder every day or every other day or something and identify what emails you're receiving that aren't junk. And if you see something that does come in from Outlook, if you right click on it, you can report that as junk or phishing, depending on what you want to do, and that'll get rid of that stuff. So, I'm finding stuff because some of the apps that I use from Google, Google sends some stuff, Microsoft's flagging it as junk. So I have to go in there and check for it. And I also have to remember that other people who get notifications won't be getting them because their stuff's going into the junk folder. So make sure you do check your junk folder. Next week, I have that automation session. So back before Christmas, I think I showed you guys how there were some automations that we could use that will do 3 or 4 different things for us, like send out an email to somebody, change a status in SharePoint and stuff like that. Really, really can't stress it. This is the future. If you want to make use of SharePoint and actually do something with it to make your time, get your time back, automation is going to be the answer. We're just looking at 3 very simple automations. I'll show you how you can change them. But once you've taken a look at that, you can apply that to so much work that you're doing, and it's a good foot in the door to looking at automations. And the link there is at mcewen.ca/make-me-tech-savvy. You can sign up for the automation session there. Rules and document libraries finally made it here. And it's still coming to some of the different sites, but basically in Microsoft Lists, we were able to set rules up to say, hey, if this column equals this, or if there's a change to this column, email me or email somebody else, whatever. That was in Microsoft Lists, which is basically like a simple spreadsheet. This functionality has now come into document libraries, which means we can now also apply it to our files. So under the 3 dots, and this is within the document library, if you go to automate, there's a thing here called rules. So I'm going to create a rule, and these are the 3 choices. So if the column changes at all, not specific, just if it changes to a specific value, if a new file has been added or a file's deleted. You choose what you want. But in this case, I'm just going to show you this one. So I have a column there in that group. It's called status. And I'm going to say when the status is changed to this value of overdue, send an email to, and then we have a column there modified by. So I could throw in a column. I can put in me, or I could put in a person's email address. But basically what's going to happen now, in theory, is here's this file here. And again, I have automations in place that can change and do some of this stuff as part of Power Automate, but this is all built-in stuff. And so it's a little simpler, but it'll still work. But I can go into this status here. I'm going to go and change it to status, overdue, close it, to overdue. And what's going to happen now is I eventually will get an email because this got marked overdue, based on the fact that I created that rule there. So really cool things that we can now take advantage of. There's calculated columns. So I have stuff where there's a due date. Is this piece overdue? And it does a calculation to say yes or no. If this says yes, then because it triggers automatically, then it could also automatically send out an email to me saying, hey, you've got this file that's overdue, you need to go look at it. So this whole automation, the simpler automation of using rules is really exciting because there's lots of cool stuff you can do with that. I'm just going to open my screen here, so if anyone has any questions while we go along, by all means. Yeah, nothing yet. Okay, it's the automation, our rules and document libraries. Google Sheets. Everyone knows how much I love Google Sheets. Google Sheets has a new tool called Cleanup. So here's a bunch of text. Notice I've got a space here at the front, and I actually have a duplicate. Huey here is duplicated, so is Major. I can go through this, select this column, and this under the data tools, it's called data cleanup. And there's cleanup suggestions. I can remove my duplicates. I can trim websites, but I'm just going to do cleanup suggestions. And it actually just lists it all through here. It says, hey, you know what? We know that there's this piece here. Do you want to remove all the duplicates? Do you only want to remove one? I can just click and go and remove them. So I don't have to go searching. Google's doing the work for me. There's some spaces here in front of these items here. Do you want to trim them all or just trim some of them? I can just do a checkbox and it'll trim all of that. So the nice thing about it is, I mean, for those who have taken my spreadsheet without numbers sessions, I use, hang on a second, I use functions to do that. The nice thing about using function is that as I add data, it automatically does that. I don't have to manually go in here, select data and say, hey, get rid of this stuff. But if someone's just handed you a bunch of information, it's static, you're not going to be adding to it at all. It's easy just to go in quickly and clean this up now with that cleanup tool. So that's quite exciting. I love that because I mean, for years I was working with web services, I would have to go in and clean those things up. And there's nothing worse than getting an output from PeopleSoft with a bunch of spaces that you don't want them in there. So that's that item. Folgo. Folgo is a add-on that allows you to do some really cool things with folders and files in your drive. Now, the add-on, the gentleman that built it has basically said, hey, any education institution that wants it, you can have it. And so we're signed up at MacEwan, so we have access to this. What it does is it takes a look at your files in a folder and gives you a bunch of options. So I've got a link there to install Folgo. Once you've installed it, you basically are going to see a new icon off on the far right here. So I'm going to go to this one here called Testing Transfers. And when we look inside it, just going to pull that open. I can see a couple of files here. Some are owned by me, some are owned by someone else. There's a file transfer, there's another folder all the way deep down. And I have all these wonderful things that I can do with it. So when I go and launch Folgo, and we're not going to sit and watch it, I'll just show you what you can do and I'll show you the results. But I can go through and do these things. I can copy the folder and all the files and folders inside it. I can request a transfer. So basically send out notes to people that own these files to say, hey, can you give me ownership of it? I can inspect a folder. The inspect folder is where you say, hey, give me a list of everything that's in this folder and all the sub-contents. I often, when I work with nonprofits, I've had other tools that I do this with, that I will go in and get a listing of all the different things that are in that folder. So basically, you highlight the folder you want, click on this, on the tool you want, and run with it. So let me show you what the search results are. And also know that if you've got like hundreds and thousands of files, this window has to stay open and it has to go through and curate all that information. So it has to stay open. So if you've got a large piece, I just do it at night, let it work overnight, and then in the morning I've got a document with all the stuff. So what it does is, this is an idea of the content. So I've said, hey, show me what's all inside there. And it comes up with a dashboard. The dashboard will give me some very basic information. And I got filters that I can play with, but once the information loads, come on, why are you taking so long today? Faster, please. Okay, I'll go over to here. So there's a second tab here while the dashboard's drawing. There it is. But there's all the files by title. There's the actual URL. So if I wanted to click on it to open up that file, there's what type it is. It's a folder or a document. Here's the location. So what folder is it in? Here's the path. And I use the path thing a lot. That's where I have fun with it. Owner and emails. Great. Owner names, webmaster, editors, and some creation date and stuff. This is great. When I work with nonprofits, I run this on the folder that they've been using, because usually it's in a personal Gmail account. I'll run an app like this that does the same thing. So I can say, you know what, you've got 30 files that are owned by this person, 60 files owned by this. You need to have that person reassign those files over to you so that you can have it in your nonprofit. And that's also what the dashboard here will do, is it says, hey, there's the number of owners, there's some names, just gives you a little highlight stuff of information. But the listing stuff is really the big cream of it all. I can also make copies of the folder. So if I want, again, sometimes with the nonprofits, I'll just say, you know what, let's just make a copy of everything. We don't care about who owned it in the past. We don't care about the history. We're going to make brand new copies and we're just going to start all over. But it's going to have the whole same folder structure and stuff. It's now somewhere else. This would be good if you wanted to back some files up before you left MacEwan, or something like that. Or if someone else is leaving MacEwan, you can say, hey, can you make copies of all this? So Fogo will do that. One of the cool things about this is I can also specify when I make a copy of it, I only want folders. And sometimes I'll do that so I can manually move stuff over. So here's this folder here called Transfer from Old Laptop. And there's the same thing. It's made copies, but it's just made copies of the folders because I'm going to manually maybe move my files over there rather than making copies and stuff. So that I always find really good. And then I can also go and rename files and folders. So originally this file was, these files were called File for Webmaster, File for Trevor. I renamed it Document for Webmaster, Document for Trevor. You can do some of this stuff if you have streaming enabled for Google Drive so that you've got that on your desktop. So you can either use your Mac OS or your Windows OS to do the renaming and stuff. But if you don't want to do it that way, if you don't have the tools, this is great. You just let it run. Again, it's got to stay open. It's got to go through all that stuff to do it, but it's a really handy tool. So we have it at MacEwan for free. So by all means, rock and roll with that. And Fogo is the tool that's called. Really, really, really handy. Teams add-in with Google Calendar. So I like Google Meets. Don't get me wrong, but there are some functionality in Microsoft Teams that I like better. Breakout rooms and stuff like that we have available to us. So in Calendar, off to the right, there's all these add-ons. You can have a plus sign here to get add-ons, and one is Microsoft Teams. And what that means is, hey, I'm going to go and authenticate to Teams, to Microsoft, using my MacEwan credentials. And now whenever I create a calendar event, I have the options of adding a Microsoft Teams Teams meeting to my Google appointment. So instead of using Google Meets, we're going to use Microsoft Teams. And I get all the function in that because I'm still logged in MacEwan Teams, even though I'm using Google here. And you could, in theory, use the same thing with your personal account. I could have my personal Gmail account log in with my Microsoft Teams account, and then every time I create an event, it's going to put in a link there. I still have to be logged in with my MacEwan account through Microsoft and all that to make use of that, but it allows me to use that one tool in the calendar, and then I don't have to actually manually go and create it or do a duplicate or anything like that. So for some people might enjoy making use of that. Approvals for nonprofits. So this is a little specific. I know there's a couple people out there that work with nonprofits. There's a function that's come out that's only available in nonprofits and the advanced pay for education. So we don't have access to it, but I'm just going to show you what it is really quickly. If I have a document open, under File, there's a thing here called Approvals. And basically, it's the whole approval process. I just have to make a request here, put in the emails of the people I want. So they have to have Google accounts, not necessarily with your domain. They could be a Gmail account, but I can go and send approvals off. I can decide whether I want these people to edit the file. Do I want to lock it so nobody can edit while it's going out and doing all that? And once everyone approves it, then I get a little flag at the top here that says this has been approved, and then now we're ready to go and make use of the file. Still keep it locked if I want, so that no one's making changes after it's been approved. That's available for nonprofits. So if anyone's using the nonprofit system, and those of you know who you are, that's a cool little tool. Speaking of Google for nonprofits, I'm just going to throw this out here. Google does have a service here called Google for Nonprofits. Basically, if you are working with a nonprofit, and I've worked with a couple and working with some other ones, If they have a registered nonprofit number, they may qualify for Google for Nonprofits, which gives them basically Google for free. So they'll be able to have a space for their nonprofit where they can put all their files in. They can have a space that they control the emails, they control everything else. So it's like having their own domain and stuff like that, but they get that for free. Google also has Google Ad Grants. Basically, again, if you qualify, and if you've got, it's pretty easy to qualify. If you qualify, you get $10,000 in free advertising. So if your nonprofit is that you're working with does some kind of fundraising and stuff, you get $10,000 in free advertising, not cash, but just free advertising to promote your stuff within the Google search and that. So hey, it's better than a kick in the head. It's free. It's ad search basically. And if you don't know a lot about ad search, they do have some tutorials that they'll take you through. And quite frankly, if you're learning, hey, it's free. So who cares if you spend your whole budget in 2 days? Doesn't matter. But Google for Nonprofits, easy to find there, and highly recommend that if you have a nonprofit there and they're just kind of using their personal Gmail account and stuff like that, that is not the way to do it. They should be working with a nonprofit, or at least having some place that they store all their files so that when Bobby and Jimmy leave, the files still stay with the nonprofit. That's it. That's all I got today. Any questions? Okay, then I am going to find the window where I can pause or stop the recording, and then we'll see if anyone else has anything else to say.